Hello, welcome to the interview here on France 24. The Soviet Union may be dead and buried, but my guest today says that some of its darkest features live on in Vladimir Putin's Russia. Zara MURTAZALIEVA was just 19 years old when she left her Chechen homeland and went to Moscow looking for a job. Within months of her arrival, however, what she thought was just a standard police identity check turned into anyone's worst nightmare. She was wrongly convicted of plotting a terror attack just steps from the Kremlin. What followed was an 8.5-year ordeal in a Siberian penal colony, 450 kilometers east of Moscow. Now, Zara was released just last month, and she's just getting used to life again. She also has a book out written by another human rights activist, Zoya Sviatova. It's only in French for now. It should be translated to English shortly, we hope. It's called The Innocent Will Be Guilty. Welcome to France 24. Thank you for speaking to us today.
Добрый день.
Hello.
Zara, I would like to begin by asking you, you say you were wrongly accused of plotting a terrorist attack in Moscow. How did you end up in a prison camp? Did you have any chance to defend yourself? Was there any type of trial?
В лагере я оказалась точно так же,
I found myself in a camp like 1,000 other people. I just, left my work at 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m. 4 people entered the building. They asked me to follow them to the police station because in Moscow there was a very difficult situation, and they were asked. I came to a police station, and 2 hours later, a bag of explosive was found in my bag, and so they brought television, and they said immediately that I'm not in the States, and so I was found myself in a trial.
And in a trial, but you went from this trial to a camp, a Siberian prison camp, which, by the way, the accounts in that book make it sound like as bad as anything that existed during the darkest time of the Stalin era.
Да, я с вами согласна.
Yes, I agree. When I was found myself in a camp, these camps exist from the Soviet period, and they have a very aggressive behavior, my jailers. So, of course, we remember Solzhenitsyn and other dissidents who described how they stayed there, and there are no many changes from that time on.
What were the conditions like on a daily basis? You were there for 8.5 years. You spoke of beatings. You spoke of humiliation. How bad was it for you? Were there any days where life was bearable there?
Оскорбления, унижения,
Of course, humiliations and beatings started from the first days on. But from the first days, I thought that they wanted to beat me in order that I recognize that I am a terrorist, but I was not ready that it will stay for 8.5 years. I was not expecting an aggression. There were many collaborators, many jailers who served in Chechnya, and so they hated us. And of course, me, who was a terrorist, so they, of course, aggressed me constantly.
Were a lot of your fellow prisoners, these were all women in this camp, were a lot of them Chechens? did you find a particular discrimination against you as a Chechen? Many Russians say Chechen equals terrorist.
Нас не было очень много, нас было
We
11 человек.
were
на момент
11
прибытия.
Chechen women
И
when I
на
arrived in the
каждом шагу
camp,
нам напоминали о
and
том, что мы
any day
чеченцы.
they were
Никто из
telling
этих
us
11 человек не
that
ушел
we
в
were
досрочно.
Chechens.
Никому не пропускали
Nobody
поощрения, не говоря уже о том, что
could be
я отбывала
liberated
спокойствие,
before the
а
end.
они совершенно другие статьи,
And
то есть
I
довольно
was a terrorist,
теннисные и
but
тяжелые.
other women had
Но как только подходило
other
срок досрочного
accusations,
освобождения, у них появлялись
but
некоторые нарушения.
nobody
им
could
говорили о том,
be
вы
liberated
чеченцы, о
before
ком
the
долго
term,
может быть и речь.
and so you are
То есть
Chechens,
они
you cannot be
досиживали свои срока,
liberated.
кто 11, кто 7,
They
кто
had to
5
stay
до
there
конца. Звонка
11
не
years, 7 years, 5 years until the end.
And yet, you, in some ways, were relatively fortunate because you got visits from human rights activists. You had a delegation from the Council of Europe's Anti-Terror Committee visit you in prison. Did that help? Did your conditions change after that?
В очень, конечно,
Yes,
естественно, в
it
большей
helped
степени
me a
это
lot.
очень помогало. Во-первых, это меня
Because
поддерживало
it
морально.
supported me morally,
Во-вторых, конечно,
and
я не знаю, насколько были бы последствия и насколько бы
I
они были
don't
более
know
тяжелыми,
whether
если бы не
my
было
fate
многих
would have
правозащитников,
been
журналистов,
even
всех
worse
этих ОНК,
if there were
что бы они со
no
мной сделали.
human rights
Благодаря их
associations who
неогласке,
supported
помощи,
me,
юридической
because my
помощи.
case
Я,
was
наверное,
known
сегодня
to
сижу
the
здесь
press,
вместе с вами.
and that's why I am still alive and I'm sitting here.
Zara, we often hear today Russia's leaders, President Vladimir Putin especially, talk about the so-called, in Russia, the word is правовое государство, a law-based state. What do you think when you hear the leaders talking about that, given what you have lived through?
Мне смешно, я думаю, точно так же,
It's
как и многим другим
ridiculous,
гражданам,
and
кто
many
проживает
other
на
people
территории Российской
will find it
Федерации и
ridiculous.
многим другим государствам в частности. Потому что говорить
Because
о России как о демократической
it is impossible to say that Russia is a democratic or law state. It is impossible. And last events show it. And it is Khodorkovsky and Pussy Riot and other people and all the persecution of oppositioners and kidnapping of Razvozhaev and perquisitions and so on.
Их действия Путина и Медведева
These
не совпадают с их
actions of Putin and Medvedev do not coincide with their words.
From the way you are describing it, it sounds like the situation is getting worse than even a few years ago.
Да, я думаю, что в последнее время уже это
Yes,
тенденция.
I think it's a tendency.
Тот пикет, который был буквально
And the day before yesterday, there was a protestation. People came out on the street to protest against the repression. And it is a clear sign that people are tired and they are not afraid to talk about that.
Zara, we are sitting here in a studio in Paris, France, talking about your experience. What do you think needs to be done to make things change in Russia? Because the obvious tendency would be for the leaders to say, we don't need the West to tell us how to run our country.
Я думаю, что нам нужен другой президент,
we need a different president
который понимает,
who
что такое
would
демократия,
understand
который
what
осознает,
is a
как строить
democracy
Россию и
and who
вести
understands
её
how
по
to
пути
build
многих
a
правовых
contemporary Russia and how to advance in the way of a law state. But now we go back to Stalin times, and this is not normal.
Very briefly, Zara, last question. How are you adjusting to your life again as a free woman?
Я думаю, я хочу наверстать все то, что я упустила.
I would like to work and to study because I lost 8 years. Now I want to get some pleasure from life.
Zara MURTAZALIEVA, thank you so much for talking to us today. You spent 8.5 years in a Siberian prison. Most of us can't even begin to imagine what that must be like. I'll just remind our viewers, you can also read more about Zara MURTAZALIEVA, her experiences, on France 24's website, www.france24, france24.com. Thank you very much for being here and watching us today. Thank you very much for being here.
Yes.